As Bob now gets it's the first of 2 flag starts. The first flight of boats gets away. And look at Tammy Wolf. She's got a bit of a problem. She's not moving. Oh my, what a shame for the woman out of Ontario. We expected to see her go. And they sent off the second flight of boats.
Now why do they do 2 flights? Why does not everybody go at once?
Well, what they're trying to do here is to give, they've split it up because they decided yesterday that possibly the 10 or 11 boats that we had originally out in practice, and then they tested it out, and they wanted to make sure that everybody could cleanly run all the way down this quarter-mile straightaway down into 5 and 6. It's something they're going to try out. I don't expect that on the final. We'll have to wait and see how that pans out. So as they work their way down on this, it's a very interesting serpentine 1.5-mile race course. And there's Tammy Wolf. She gathered herself up, and now she is flying as she takes that Italian Baba boat built in Milan, Italy, down into the corner, into turn number 2, a hard left-hander, a 90-degree sweep. Now about 100 meters off into the right turn here. This is the turning complex to the right, left that we have here. Very busy for these drivers, and Tammy Wolf out of Ontario, Canada, in that pink boat. She has raced many times in France, as we've got one of the, what a shame, one of the boats that have dropped out. Looks like it's one of the Auto Place tough trailer boats that is pulled off the race course. That team out of British Columbia.
Now, Tammy, is this unusual to see Tammy out front, or is she used to being out there?
No, she's used to running very strongly when she's running Formula 2. That's the class below Formula 1. As we talked about, this engine that she's running is very unique because it is what they call a Mercury Optimax 200 XS SST engine. That's a lot of words and syllables, but this is the future. These are the green engines. These are the 4-cycle engines, and they're a lot less harmful on the environment than 2-cycle engines are.
Now you can see the motor tipped up quite a bit if you think about your outboard at home or in your neighborhood, how much tilt they've got on it, but that's going back and forth, correct?
Yeah, now she's controlling that within the boat itself. She's got buttons on her steering wheel.
There it's flat. See, the motor's pretty flat there.
Absolutely. What she does is she adjusts the engine angle on the back of the transom. She raises the boat up, and that kicks the engine back, and what happens is she gets rid of all the drag. She gets the speed there. When she needs to go into the corner, there are no brakes there. She'll lower the boat into the water, and just like skates or skis, it'll slow you down and set you around the corner right there as she works her way around the left-hander. Maybe 3 Gs she's pulling right now, but she's out in the lane, and she's looking strong here in heat number 3. She needs a good finish for her to get up into the top 4 in the final this afternoon.
And how important is that starting position on the dock? Is that a make or break deal, or could you be in a horrible dock position and still win the race?
Well, you can still, but that's you're going to need a little bit of luck. You're going to need help. If you're not up into the top 3 or 4 positions, then you're going to need all sorts of things to go your way, because it's a long run down into the first commitment buoy, and if you're on the outside lane, you're going to have a longer way around the course, and you're going to lose a lot of real estate right off the bat.
And for the folks at home watching these boats, they race 24 hours through the night in France. And you told me, Steve, that not only are they racing at night on the Seine, there's barge traffic going up and down the river.
It's totally unbelievable because they race in the dark. They got lights on the boats, and yes, they do. It's a navigable river that's being used all the time, and they've got to duck around these huge barges that go by. So you can imagine not only getting lost in the dark, and hopefully you can see where you're going, but then all of a sudden you got huge barge traffic going by at the same time. It's quite a show. It's been going on for many years, and it's a real tradition. That's always the first week of May in France.
And Tammy did very well in that 24-hour race in an all-female team, correct?
She did. She and Marit Stromoy of Norway, who is one of the premier drivers in the world, who's a woman entertainer out of Norway. She hooked up with her. There were 4 women on that team, and they finished up on the podium in the top 3.
Tammy's starting to get a little pressure, it looks like.
Yeah, she's trying her best. She's trying to hold off the charge, but I'll tell you, she's got some wonderful competitors behind her. And here comes Chris Fairchild. Chris Fairchild, so far in these heats, is trying to do his best to close up. He won heat number 2. Mike Ness, who's right behind in that black and yellow boat from British Columbia, the 40-year racing veteran. He is up in the top 3. So this is what we expected to see. Those 2 boats behind closing in anger. They are going to be the key factors in the final this afternoon. Let's see if they can catch Tammy here down the long straightaway.
She's hearing footsteps. I assume they have radio people telling her that she's getting pressure from both the inside and the outside.
Yeah, she's on radio communication. Crew chief telling her what's going on. He's her spotter. He's telling her exactly where to go. She feels pressure. Maybe she can stretch that corner out a little wider and forcing the boat behind him, because you don't want to get directly behind these boats. As you know, in unlimited hydroplanes, it can be a disaster. Well, the same thing here. You get a lot of aeration in your propeller. You get it all stirred up. In other words, a lot of air coming off the propeller. And what that does is cut the bite of your propeller when you're behind the leader. So you want to stay either to the inside or the outside, preferably the inside.
And now we have a 4th boat getting into the mix here. So these next few laps are going to be really good. And Tammy's got a lot of pressure.
Well, just over 2 laps left to run here in this 7-lap third qualifying heat to determine a starting lineup. We're glad you're with us this afternoon here at Lake Washington. This is a tremendous battle now. Side by side, Chris Fairchild has lost that 2nd place as boat number 69, Mike Nass, out of British Columbia, slid up, and now it's a good, huge, titanic struggle for that 2nd place. Tammy somehow hanging on desperately, but boy, they're nipping at her heels. And as you mentioned, here comes the 3rd boat coming up for that fight for 2nd place. It looks like it's possibly Tyler Welch who's trying to make the move on. Let's see what happens here.
And here comes a 5th boat into the mix. So this is really getting good now.
Father and son side by side. We've got a problem with one of the boats dropping back. It could be Mike Nass. Oh, what a shame for the driver from British Columbia. It looks like he is slowed to a stop down in the corner, down in turn number 4. Oh, wow, that's going to make a big, big difference in this lineup if he can't find a way to fire that engine up and get back into this race, because he finished 1st in the 1st heat, 2nd in the 2nd heat. But if he doesn't get many points here with 5 laps now completed.
And here comes Fairchild in that white boat. So Tammy is getting a ton of pressure. And Chris Fairchild, he has got a ton of experience.
All right, as we check it now, this is the final lap here, and Fairchild is pushing all that he can to try to close up on the driver from Ontario as we watch him go through the twisty bits.
And they've got some lap traffic to deal with, which is something you don't see in unlimited racing, but lap traffic here can make or break you.
Look at the menagerie of boats going through here. It's almost like a scrum as they come fighting through on the back end now here. This is a power boat race for pure speed on his final lap. Can Tammy Wolf from Ontario hold off Chris Fairchild from Illinois, who has been on the podium 3 years in a row here in Seattle, looking for his first victory? And he wants that number 1 position to start off pole. But Tammy Wolf now working her way down the front straightaway. Does she have enough power? And she's going to come across, and Tammy Wolf will take it flag to flag and win here in this 3rd heat. What a great run for the woman out of Ontario and Toronto. She picks up the victory here in heat number 3 and moves herself up in the final.
And was under pressure from the beginning. Look how happy she is. When you're getting pressure from a guy like Chris Fairchild, you're getting pressure from the best.
Absolutely. There she is in that lovely Baba Italian-built boat, waving to the crowd, saying, hey, I am number 1 right now, baby. And she is so excited about moving on, because that was a big victory for her. We expect to see her up in the top 5 in that starting lineup in the final. So hats off to Tammy Wolf, driving that lovely futuristic boat out of Italy, and she got the job done as she held off the charge of 26-year racing veteran Chris Fairchild, who finished in that 2nd position.
I would love to see more women racing in all forms of powerboat racing. In Unlimiteds, we have had women in the past. You see Tammy here, and there's no real reason that a woman cannot excel at powerboat racing. So we got to get young girls into it, get them that experience in the smaller classes, so they can be up here like Tammy, fighting for wins.
Yeah, and the colleague that she raced in that race in France a couple of years ago, Marit Stromoy, became the first woman ever in international motor competition, whether you're on the water or on land, to win an international Grand Prix. She did that just before Christmas last year in Sharjah. A real surprise and a real great boost for Formula One racing around the world. Marit Stromoy from Norway, her ex-teammate, won a race for the first time.
If you're a young girl in the Northwest watching here on Kiro, We have a lot of outboard racing here in this area. Contact the Seattle Outboard Association. If you're 9 to 12 years old, they can get you started in powerboat racing that can lead to this or the Unlimited. So we're really lucky here in the Northwest that we have the Seattle Outboard Association to give young people. Look at how happy she is.
And Tammy Wolf, like as you mentioned, started in the smaller classes. You know, if you get involved in powerboat racing, it's a very big family venture. You know, you get everybody involved, you work together for a goal, and the family has a reason to be there together on a weekend, and it's such a fun thing to do. And it's so much cheaper than getting involved in auto racing, where you spend a lot of your money changing tires and engines. And this is something that you don't really run into as much here in powerboat racing.
Somebody better radio Tammy and tell her that wasn't the final, because she looks so excited and happy. I think she thinks she just won the whole thing.
Well, she's very good at realizing, of course, she's sponsored by Mercury of Canada, that you know, the crowd's here, they're out in the rain, they're hanging in there. Now the sun's back out again. Everybody's made their way over to the park today, and it's she's thanking the crowd for just showing up and spending the afternoon with her.
I thought they were here for us.
They're here for all of us.
Oh.
For her right now, it's her moment, so hats off. By the way, you and I were talking about this yesterday off camera, about the connection between Formula One racing and unlimited hydroplane racing. There was a connection for many years, wasn't there?
Absolutely.
So there you see Tammy Wolf, the winner of this latest heat 3 of F1 racing. Let's go to the results as we have them. There you are, Tammy Wolf with Chris Fairchild, Tyler Welch, and Mark Welch rounding out the top 4 in heat 3 of F1 racing.
The Graham Trucking Seafair Cup is presented by Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram of Seattle and is presented for Seafair by Graham Trucking.